Well, hopefully the camera caught it. Hello everybody and welcome to another fun-filled episode of Tin Time Projects. Yes, you're right, it's the TS940, the poor thing. Guess you saw the meter slam there. Let me back out. I was holding this board up to give us so you didn't have all that reflection, but let me back out and get a better view so you don't have to stare at a reflection. Alright, here's the gizzards of the TS940 again, and this is the IF filter board, the intermediate filter board here, and that's the board that we're going to be looking at today. So somebody had seen one of my other videos and said, hey, why don't you fix that meter slam? It's a pretty easy fix. Well, I had seen some paperwork going on that somebody showed a repair for it, but it wasn't sanctioned by Kenwood. Not that I'm saying they're the be-all, end-all, but I would think that they would fix their own radio. So I was always hesitant about trying it. So when somebody mentioned that, I thought I'll dig it up, and I looked, and I had saved one from, and unfortunately it doesn't have the person's name listed that actually wrote it, so I could either give them a shout out or hate them if this all screws up. But it's a pretty easy fix, and it makes sense. So without really vetting it, I'm going to give it a shot, and I'll show you the information I've arrived at here, and then we'll go ahead and do it, and then we'll see if it works. Okay, so here's the fix, and as you can see, it's just a PDF document, and there's nobody has claimed this. But it's the meter slam. First they tell you to remove the IF board, and they give you an easy way to do it. And it tells you to locate jumper J5, and I'll show you where I found that. Basically remove that, put a 1N914, which is what 1N4148, I believe, the same diode basically now. Tells you the orientation of how to put it, and I guess if it's possible, I'd like to put it on the top of the board so it's evident that it's there. And then, let's see, they tell you again, drive home the orientation a little bit more. And then you put would be a 100 microfarad 25 volt electrolytic capacitor from the, let's see, from the same junction at 178. So the cathode side, and the resistor at 178. Remember resistor 178, I'll tell you why in a minute. You solder a capacitor there to ground, and that's it. So it's a pretty easy thing, and I'll kind of leave this like this so you can get a look at it for a second or two. Alright, so first thing I wanted to do was I took a look and said, hey, where is this dag blasted doohickey? Where am I looking? IF board right here. Jumper 5. So if you look right here, and I'll put some color onto it. Red. If you look right in, I'll just go right up beside it. Right this guy right here, that's jumper 5. See right down here? The J5. So let me erase that so it doesn't throw us off. Anyhow, so that's where it's supposed to be. So let's look at the board and see if it's there. But in the meantime, look up here. We also see R178, the one I told you to keep your mind, or keep in your mind. So we know it's going to be close to R178, and R178 looks to be, by the diagram here, it's going to be probably one of those resistors that stood up, not laying down flat. So let's see. So one other thing I want to look at, what is the orientation of this R178? What does it do? What does the dishwasher do? Let's see. So let's go to the IF schematic. Alright, here's 179, where 178's over in this area. Hope you're still with me there. Hope you can see it. There's 178. Yeah. So apparently there was a jumper that connected one side of 178 to back. Sorry, I didn't pay better attention to that. Let's see, so here's the jumper. Yeah, one side goes to 178, and then if you follow the other side, which would be right here, we'll follow it kind of around this way just to get an idea where it goes, to 162. Anyhow, in a long drawn out process, it's going to be some supply voltage and let's see where it is back here on the schematic. So R162. I have schematic back here. So hang on, I'll find it and I'll be right back. Okay, another thing's kind of interesting. If you look right here, right above where my red line is, let me see if I can get back to it. Right here, it says R178, and then it says R178 up here as well. What the heck? No thanks. Let's see. So anyhow, that R178, apparently taking this jumper out, is going to be basically removing the connection to power. So it looks like 178 is going to pin 1 maybe of IC1. Let's look. Let's just look. I have schematic. So where's IC1's right? This guy right here, pin 1. Yep. If you follow it, where am I again? I'll see. Here's pin 1. I think it's going to be black this time when I draw. Here's pin 1. It comes up, goes around the bend, down. Whoops, sorry. Goes all the way over. Goes up to here and to here. Right there, it would have been easier to follow pin 1 of IC2 if I didn't have tunnel vision when I was looking. Okay, both of those go to that. The other side of this comes right down here. You see this red right here, this red line? That's indicating that that's DC power. So basically it sounds like they want us to sever this line here and put the diode in, what they say, with the cathode toward the resistor. So it would be like this. I believe that's what it said. Let me just look at this. Did it say? Let's see. From the junction, the cathode's end of the diode. The same junction with R178 and cathode end of the diode. That says it there, and with the cathode going to 178. So the cathode's the negative side, or the black line on the diode, or the line on the schematic. Okay, so spent enough time looking at that. So we know, okay, it's a power line and it's going to do something. It's going to have a slight voltage drop maybe, or a delay. What's the purpose? Not really too sure quite yet. So let's look at this circuit right here. And let me take some of these lines out of here. I'm not going to go into a bunch with this because it's a comparator circuit, but actually it looks like two comparator circuits, and it looks like it's over-engineered. I'm sure they had a reason for it. Okay, so here we have it, my artist's rendition of what would happen here. That's our new diode right here. That's our new capacitor. This will take the place of J5. Right here where it says J5, this little area here, that's actually the 15 volt line. It comes up, goes through R178, I believe it is, and feeds power to pins 1 of both ICs. So I think what the idea behind this is it'll slow down the transition from 0 to full voltage, because when it first powers up, it'll charge that capacitor, slowing it down, and then when it discharges, the voltage won't be able to flow back through here because of the diode, so the capacitor is going to hold it at charge a little bit and slowly let it bleed itself off. So that is probably the reasoning behind that working. Now that's all in theory. Let's see if it really works. So that's kind of what it would look like drawn, and I'm going to attempt to put the diode on the top side of the board. The capacitor, I probably am going to have to put it underneath because it's going to go basically, it's going to go between pins 1 and pin 1 and 4 of IC2. IC2, that actually goes to ground, and I think it's pin 6 of IC1 goes to ground as well. So I may have to put that capacitor underneath. I haven't taken the board out yet to see how that's going to run, but that's what it'll look like physically. And then electrically, here it is right here. This area right here, that's the new capacitor in there with the cathode pointed toward R178, and then there'll be a oh sorry, that's the new diode with the cathode pointed toward 178, and then the capacitor here, the positive would attach to that same point, and the negative would go to a ground somewhere. Okay, so the screws in question are here, 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 and don't forget this guy right here. Then the two connectors to pull off for that one and this one. I think that's what he said. I haven't pulled it out yet to see. Here is J5. I'm going to zoom into it so you can see exactly what we're talking about. I believe it even says it for you right here. This wire right here. Let's see if I can get you a better view of it. Oops, sorry. Using a bench mount for the scope, or for the camera. Alright, so it'll be, where the heck I lost it? Oh, this guy right here gets replaced with a diode, and well, I lost that too. Somewhere I had a diode for it. I have it here, but we're going to flip the board obviously, so I have to heat it up and remove it and see if there's going to be room underneath for that. Looks like there'll be plenty of room underneath for that capacitor as well. So let's see. I'm going to back you back out and see what happens. This harness here is a real killer. Alright. So that'll definitely be up enough to work on things. And I'll be back. Alright, so I don't know how much you're going to be able to see while I'm actually doing this, but it looks like this guy right here is the jack, or I mean jumper 5, and it goes over to here. So my head's going to be in the way the whole time, so I'm not going to bother filming it. I'll just get my head and hear everybody talking. Okay, so there you have it. J5's out, the diode's in with double check. With the, sorry if you're seeing my face, the cathode is pointing toward the resistor, so the cathode's up. So now I have to put the capacitor in yet. Let me just see where a good place for that is as well. Okay, so there's the finished product here, the capacitor. The plus is soldered to the cathode of the diode that I put in, and the negative side goes over here, the sixth pin, which goes to ground, and I even ohmed it out just to make sure. And then underneath the cap I put a little piece, that's just a piece of insulator from behind the transistor with a little bit of glue to hold it in place. Glue on the capacitor, not on the board. We've learned our lessons with glue on boards. Let's see. So I'm going to let that set up a little bit, and then I'm going to flip it back in, and we'll be ready to give it the old test. So it's been like a week since I did anything on this, because and no fault of the seller, I would assume, but I think the Postal Service kidnapped my part. It said it'd be here on the 3rd of July, and I was all excited when I saw on the 1st of July it had already made it to Warrendale, which is a place north of Pittsburgh. And I knew that I was only about 40 minutes from there, so I thought my part, it was early in the morning, I thought my part might be here today, the 1st. It didn't come the 1st, so I said, well, I know it'll be here the 2nd. Didn't come the 2nd. I said, well, they promised on the 3rd, it'll be here on the 3rd. Well, the 3rd I looked, and it was in Madison, Wisconsin. So it spent the holiday weekend in Madison, Wisconsin. And since Monday was a holiday, it didn't go anywhere. That's the compensatory holiday for people that aren't working on Sundays, like the post office. So then on Tuesday, it took a ride from there and went from Wisconsin to Illinois. And then from Illinois on was it Tuesday or Wednesday, it went from Illinois to back to Warrendale, Pennsylvania. And then from there it went to the Pittsburgh Center, and then from there it dispatched all over the place, and then finally I saw it going out for delivery. So I knew if it could make it back to Warrendale or Pittsburgh, it would probably eventually find me. So anyhow, my capacitors are here, and it's in, and in just a few minutes we'll be able to. I want to dummy this in there, or Timmy it in there, and then we'll check it and see how it works. Alright, so there's the board back in. It's the two connectors back plugged in. Guess you notice like some of this here. These, let's see if you can see what I'm looking at. Well, probably not completely. Try to get you a better view. Down a little bit more. Ooh, that's scary. Okay. These filters, this filter, and then this one that's over here, and if you look at this guy here, you'll notice that these pins are kind of soldered on there. I guess this must have been an aftermarket filter. These are supposed to be really good filters, but I guess these were like a fits-all, so that's why they had to cut, and basically they cut the Molex pins, or the standoff pins, on, I think it's just this side, and then you had to solder the wires. There's a whole set of instructions that came with it. I don't know if I would have done that, you know, had I bought this new and had filters, I don't know if it would have been in me to cut that. But anyhow, you can actually get the filters where the Kenwood only filters, and they plugged right on, and you didn't have to cut them. But again, they work, so other than being a little ugly and I guess non-formal, they're fine. So just in case you noticed that. So let's see, I think we're about ready to stand this up and fire it up, and I'm not going to put the covers on. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Alright, so for the maiden voyage, I have you trained onto the meter. I haven't started. I actually turned this light on so that it lights it up a little bit for you, because it was kind of dark. Let me see. Yeah, definitely. Alright, so that's back on. We're ready to try it. I got an antenna plugged in. Let me just make sure that that's plugged where it has to be. Okay. Let's see what happens. I did get a little bit of a peak with that. All right, we're up in the children's band, CB band. All right. Needle seems to work. Let me turn this down. I'm looking at it backwards. Now the true test, when I turn it off, does it go crazy? Yes, still does, but if you notice, it's different. First it dies, then it jumps. The jump's not quite as bad. Go on and turn it on. Want to turn it off. First it dies, then it jumps. So, give that some thought. And seems like we were somewhat on the right path, but not totally. Let's see how much it jumps. No, it doesn't slam as hard, but it still slams over, in my opinion, anyhow. Let me see some. Turn that off. Okay. So that'll be the first installation. Okay, I threw another 100 microfarad capacitor in parallel with the one that was in there, and I'll let you see the results. Hopefully you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit better. Here we go. Let me check this. Probably change something. Yeah, I think I had to spin the radio to do this. Well, hang on, I gotta spin the radio back and see what I did. That's still there, that's there. My head's gonna get in the way for a second here. That's off. Oh. Never mind. Never mind, I lost my mind. When I spun the radio, I turned the AF gain knob all the way. I was gonna say, nothing looked like it was touching anymore, but I'll show you here in a second. Let me zoom out a little bit more. Yeah, the other out. When you're zooming out, you can see the capacitors here, and I left it in. I just put a set of jumpers to it, and I'll show you in a minute what I did. But let's see if you can see the meter now. It does a little bump when you first turn it on. Seems to be working. Yeah, here's what I had the AF gain all the way, and it went like that. So that's what I did. I had the knob turned. Now watch when I turn it off. No bump turning it off. Little bump, turn it on, not very bad, doesn't go anywhere. Turn it back off, no bump. So either I need a 200 microfarad capacitor there as opposed to a 100, or I have a bad new capacitor, which I doubt, or I may put it in incorrect Okay, no, it's not really a valid thing because there's so many leads and everything involved here. But what I'm doing is I have the capacitance meter hooked up and checking to see what the capacitance is across that diode. Now this is with that extra capacitor that I put in installed. So to pull that off and see, so with both capacitors it showed 181.34. So when I take one of them out, it should be probably closer to 100. Alright, and with one removed it's 92.89, so that was right about half of what that should be. So I think it's going to be necessary to increase the capacitance on that to 200 as opposed to 100. And I just want to check and make sure that that write-up that I had did say 100, not 200. Maybe I just imagined it, but I'll double check that. Obviously I'm going to pull this board back off again, and that's one of the reasons why you don't put the covers back on. But the other reason is all these connectors, and if you hear me say on these whenever I'm working on these are all sore spots, all these wires and connectors. So you never put the cover back on until you mess around with it for about an hour, because guaranteed after you put the cover on you're going to see maybe the AM light doesn't light up, or the potentiometer for the processor doesn't work. Something goofy like that because a wire got jammed or touched or moved, because these connectors come off really easy. So let me pull that back off and back to the drawing board. Okay, and so here we have remove the board, take two. I want to check that capacitor real quick. We already kind of know what we're getting into here, but let's double check. I don't know if you can see the meter. Let me put that onto there, and put that onto there. What do we get? 92 microfarads. So that was a pretty good test, so I don't think that's bad. So what I'm going to do is, actually, because I don't have any 200s and because I waited 2 weeks for some capacitors, I'm just going to run another one right in parallel with that and glue it down and see how that works, because I just happen to have one right here in my hand. So give me a few minutes and we'll be back. Okay, and there we have the second capacitor in parallel, and add another little piece of that insulation from the transistors that I put underneath that one as well, and let the glue set up a little bit, and we'll flip that one over and put it back in and give this a try again and see what we get. Okay, so when you're putting this board in for the 15,000th time, be careful of these wires under here, because they can very easily get tucked under the board and then you have to pull it back out again. So I like to kind of put them off to the side until I'm ready for them, and then I just let them fall back down. Once everything's set in place, I just let them fall back underneath everything. The board's not screwed down yet, obviously, because it's moving around. But anyhow, I wanted to point that out, because I know a couple of times I put this in the past and when I went to look for these wires, they were under the board. So, okay. Okay, I think I have the camera adjusted enough. You can kind of see the needle and everything. Power's back on, antenna's connected back up. Let's give it a shot. Not bad. Try and tune something in. Oh. Hang on, let me connect the antenna, the outside antenna. Okay, the outside antenna is connected up now, let's shut it off and see what we get. Nice. Power on. Get that little bit of a bump halfway. Got a signal. Power off. Almost nothing. That's pretty good. Let's just try on. Let's shoot up on 28 on. This meter's always doggy on 28. On AM it seems to work pretty good. When I get a signal over about a 2 or 3, it's fine, but one thing I did notice about this radio is there's no preamp built into it, at least that you can turn on and off like a lot of the other radios. But I know even the ICOM on 28, maybe it's just this antenna's gain, but on 28, if I don't have the preamps on it, I also get a zero noise, which I don't know. But anyhow, oh, let's see. Yeah. So let's see, when we shut it off, what do we get? A little bit of a bump, almost nothing. So I would say with 200 microfarads that we'll call this a success. So one other thing, when you're working on your TS940 or probably any of your Kenwoods this era, before you put them back together, play with it for about an hour, make a contact or two, switch around different bands, because almost every time, like I've said before, you'll find it one of these connectors is loose and you have to get back in here. So I always take my time putting it back together, make sure it runs, maybe talk on the net or something with it for a while, and then I'm like, okay, then I'll put the covers back on. So even though the covers aren't on, I'd say this job is completed and a success. There we go. There it is. But you may want to opt for somewhere between 100 and 200 microfarads. So thanks for watching. Hope it helps you out somewhere, or if you want to try it, give it a shot.